Okay, this is video lecture for the week number 3 of the Humanities 2 course. And I'm just going to jump right into some of the discussion questions. The first one is, since Thomas Jefferson was greatly influenced by Locke's views on political and social behaviors, would it be just to view the Declaration of Independence as an interpretation of Locke's views? And the answer is absolutely. When Jefferson writes, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights." This is mirroring Locke's idea of a social contract that um, and it links to the next question, which is explain deism in more detail. The creator that Jefferson is referencing is the creator of the deist point of view, which was shared by nearly all of these intellectuals of that time. Um, Deism is the idea that God exists, God created the universe, and he created human beings with reason, and then he steps back and leaves things alone. And so deists would then um, privilege reason above anything else. And so you see deists largely rejecting religion, traditional religion. They considered both Protestant and Catholic Christianity to be superstition for the most part. Um, Jefferson himself, there's such a thing as the Jefferson Bible, where he took a Bible and cut out all the parts that he didn't think were rational. And so you get a very different kind of Bible. For instance, he leaves in all of Jesus's teachings on ethics and morals, but he takes out all references to miracles, for instance, because those are not rational. And so um, the Declaration of Independence is based on the idea that God made people in a certain way, and gave human beings reason to figure out the world that God has made. And so the mind then for a deist becomes the vehicle by which God allows people to discover the truth about reality, life, the universe, and everything. And you see this a lot, and many of the deist philosophers made these very grand claims for themselves. People like Locke and Hume, um, they thought that they were pretty much ending philosophy. They didn't see a way that after what they had done, anyone could build on that. They thought that they had used reason to discover the truth with a capital T about the way the world works. And um, they never dreamed that it would just keep on rolling along, which is the thing that finally frustrates everybody who looks very deeply into philosophy. You can be very interested, and it looks cool. And I mean, you read what Socrates wrote, you read what Aristotle wrote, and you read what some of these Enlightenment philosophers had to say, and it all seems really, well put together, and they really know what they're talking about until the next person comes along and says, "Nope, that's not the way it is at all. It's this way," and on we go again. And philosophy has kind of continued down that road for a very, very long time. Um, but during the Enlightenment, these folks really thought they had the world figured out. And what Jefferson was doing in the Declaration of Independence was applying the ideas of deism to the founding of America. And so what you have with America is this: we're the only country in the history of the world that was ever founded on a creed. It's basically, we are American, we are who we are because we believe this. And up until America broke away from Great Britain, that had never happened before. I don't have a whole lot of patience for the people who are revising history in many ways. There's a very influential guy called David Barton who does a lot of speaking in churches and at political events, who tries to say that Jefferson and the rest of the founding fathers were fundamentalist Christians. And the only way you can say that is to really not look at the whole drift of thought amongst that crowd of people during that day and age. Um, and if you squint your eyes just right and really ignore a lot of other things that they said and did, you might be able to say that these people were Christians. But when you don't squint your eyes just right and you look at all the other things they had to say, for instance, Thomas Jefferson, you know, I don't know a single Christian person who would be okay with simply taking a razor blade to your Bible and cutting out the parts that you don't think are true. And so that's who these people were. And that was by and large the philosophical and religious outlook of most of the intellectuals of the Enlightenment period. Next question. With women like Abigail Adams proclaiming the rights of women as far back as 1777, why do you think it took over 100 years before we had certain legal rights? And I also want to mention Mary Wollstonecraft in there as one of these figures of the Enlightenment, a female who wrote about the rights of women. And you do see this kind of agitation towards greater rights, and yet it takes a very long time, even for women to have the right to vote. And the best I can say to that is we have a very sexist Western cultural tradition. Women don't count for much in Enlightenment thinking. And I think I kind of, when I asked you the short essay question for this week, I was thinking about that to some degree. You have these brilliant thinkers and these people who are very much interested in things like human equality and dignity and rights and so forth and so on. But when Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, he did not mean women. He did not mean people who were not white. He did not mean people who were not rich. Right? A man, all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Right? The man meant rich white guy, and that's it. And so we have seen this concept evolve over time. And one of the things that I think is positive in our history is we have watched over time a gradual drift towards greater and greater recognition of dignity in all kinds of people. The idea that there's no one who should be treated worse than anyone else is a new idea in the world. It really is. And most societies have defined themselves in ways that meant rights and privileges for us and none for anybody else. And a great deal of the violence and injustice that you see in this Enlightenment era is in direct contradiction to the ideals that were stated by these intellectuals themselves. There's a tremendous contradiction there. And it's taken a very long time for us as a culture to realize some of the ideals that these people presented. Jefferson really did not imagine that black people, for instance, would ever be included under that blanket pronoun man. It's not a pronoun, it's a noun, but it's a general noun. Man in the Declaration of Independence. Here's a neat question. What was the actual reasoning behind the wigs that used to be worn by men in the Enlightenment age? You see these guys, they're all wearing wigs. They still do in Britain, in law courts, right? They wear these wigs, these white powdered wigs. What is that all about? And the answer is pretty interesting, like so many of these answers are. Syphilis, okay? Syphilis is a terrible venereal disease that ravaged Europe and beginning in around the 1500s. But one of the symptoms of venereal disease is your hair falls out. And when Louis the 14th, right, the guy that made Versailles and set the standard for fashion and awesomeness in that age, started to lose his hair at a young age. This was not going to work well with his ability to aggrandize himself. Remember, everything he did with the arts and with the culture was, how grand am I? How can I make myself more royal and seem more important? And so losing your hair, everyone would go, hey, we know why. Now, Louis XIV didn't have syphilis, but he was going bald. And so he started wearing wigs. And when rich, powerful people start doing something, guess what happens? Everybody else follows in line. And so this fashionable male wig thing happened because of syphilis and Louis XIV losing his hair. And that's the amazing actual answer to that question. Um, so keep sending me questions. I will tackle next week. If you have any questions or difficulties and need to get in touch with me, please do.